Welcome to 100 Proof Radio with Jay Wesley, your weekly journey into examining your spirit choices and social etiquette in different settings. Do you know the written and unspoken rules about ordering and consuming alcohol during a night out on the town with your friends, at office holiday parties, or when hosting at home? Well, pour your favorite drink and get ready for an unfiltered, enlightening, and comfortable ride. Sip back and relax. And welcome to 100 Proof Radio with Jay Wesley.
Thank you all for tuning in to the 40th episode of Cocktails and HR. So we're going to sip to our 40th episode. Today's topic is cocktails and HR. Hashtag #MeToo. Women, men, and alcohol in the workplace. Tipsy, touchy is the hashtag. Tonight we will explore, as we always do, in a healthy, live, fun, candid, mature conversation to discover what happens when you mix alcohol in the workplace. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt a little too tipsy in front of your boss, or seeing your boss too tipsy in front of you? What would you do? How would you handle yourself? Or have you ever been around a colleague who was a little too drunk and it made you feel uncomfortable? Tonight on 100 Proof Radio Show with yours truly, Jay Wesley, we will be discussing the proper way to handle any of these situations. So be sure to tune in live on Rolling Out's Facebook page to join this conversation. Tonight's show is brought to you in part by Litty Pops, the ultimate summer treat for adults. Get a Litty Pop today to make America lit again. That's unique. Human resources departments all over the nation have a much tougher role in modern days as companies are held more accountable to be socially responsible with respect to hosting office parties, Christmas gatherings that involve alcohol. In addition, more grassroots and tech companies, especially those that employ a large constituency of millennial professionals, now have to navigate drinking in the office on Friday afternoons. As a result, it is imperative, perhaps now more than ever, that employees know the proper drinking etiquette and decorum for drinking on the job, and when entertaining clients, how to close the deal with sipping. So we're going to take a moment and introduce our guest. We are going to start right here with Cocktail's very own Heather McCullum. How are you, Heather?
I'm doing okay. How you doing?
I'm excellent. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule, because not only is Heather the HR director for Cocktail Chronicles, but she is an HR consultant for many organizations. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
My company is called Better HR, and you can find it at mybetterhr.com. And the basis of my business is to deconstruct the employment relationship. So usually it's a patronizing relationship where the employer is in charge and the employees are not in charge, and it's an adversarial relationship. We really try to work on building a good bridge for adults to work together. So peace for employees and peace for employers through the intervention of HR.
All right, excellent. And now on our phone lines, all the way from Pennsylvania, and she can correct me if I'm wrong, but we have Miss Delphine Hall, Senior Corporate Recruiter for C-Vents. How are you, Miss Hall?
I'm doing well, Jay Wesley. Thank you very much for having me tonight.
No,
I'm actually from the DMV area.
Okay, so I wasn't too far off when I said Virginia.
Right.
All right.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm an HR professional for over 20 years. Primarily, I've been responsible for project program management as well as corporate recruiting.
All right.
So right now, I'm working for a top technology company.
And so you can definitely relate to what I just said in the introduction with tech companies are doing more partying than more other categories of organizations with hiring so many millennials, because it's those millennials that really keep you going with technology. So have you experienced what I just stated in your organization?
Absolutely. I would say for the last 10 years or so, I have been in companies that do cater to the millennials, and they actually, offer spirits during happy hour, during all kinds of company events.
All right, excellent. Well, we're looking forward to hearing more of your stories because you and I have had a off-wall conversation before today, and you
Right.
were a little bit of an inspiration for this conversation. So I'm looking forward to you sharing some of those stories without disclosing privacy or names. But next
Absolutely.
in the studio, we have with us an attorney, Chantel Mullen. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Excellent. If you can speak up to the microphone a little bit.
Okay.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am an attorney. I've been so for about 20 years. I've practiced in a variety of fields. Currently, I'm in education, but prior to that, I was in private practice. So I've represented people who have had DUIs, have represented people in family matters, and some of it involved alcohol. So it's been an experience, and if you've had any time to socialize around attorneys, you will see that a lot of their social events will involve alcohol.
Absolutely. So I'm looking forward to hearing more of what you have to say. But right now, we are getting ready for a sip break. So if you don't have your drink, go and get your drink so you can be sipping with us. And this part of the show is brought to you by Litty Pops. How are you, ladies?
Hey, thank you for having us.
It's our pleasure.
Yes. So, Litty Pops, thank you for having the ultimate summer treat. Today, what we're going to do is, well, first off, Litty Pops is founded in St. Louis, is where we're from. We're also based in Atlanta, and we're based in D.C., and Nashville is where we're at currently. And we ship. We definitely ship to states where it's legal, but we definitely ship if you are interested in purchasing some of our products. We have 13 different flavors, and today we brought our most popular flavors for you guys to try today. We got Miami Vice right here, which is a pina colada based drink, so hopefully everybody's good with that Hawaiian feel, and it'll make you feel like you're in Miami. Strawberry colada as well, and it has Tito's. So our pops are they're literally equivalent to one shot. So exactly, I don't know if you guys want to make it to the second sip session, but you know. And then right here is Jane Lois Lane. She's a part of our Litty committee, which is a group of females who walk around getting everybody lit. So let's pass this around to you guys. Take a sip of that. Yeah, and so, yeah, see, exactly. So one Litty Pop is going to get you feeling good. Two Litty Pops is going to get you feeling a little bit, and 3 Litty Pops are going to get you really, really lit. Yeah.
Excellent. So Heather, what do you all think?
Yeah, this would be dangerous at a work event, but at a private event, I highly recommend taking your kids to the pool.
Yeah.
You don't have to drive anywhere.
And I mean, that's what we are starting to do, though. We're starting to get more and more inquiries about coming to work events because it's summertime.
That's right.
And so it's a different treat. It's not the traditional drink,
Cool you
and people
off.
want to try it. Yeah. So.
Absolutely. Easy to pack.
Yes, we have a pack. The pack is right here. It comes like this, 6 for $25. Our website is littypops.com.
So for everyone out there, what do you think of this conversation tonight?
Well, I think it's very interesting and important because I've been in those environments plenty of times, where you're around coworkers, and then of course our product being alcohol based, we are around people all the time in a professional setting when we're doing this. So I mean, it is important. You have to know your limit. You really do have to know your limit, but you don't want to be rude because you do want to be able to, partake. Sometimes the coffee machine used to be the thing. The coffee machine, everybody hang around the coffee maker or whatnot. And I never drank coffee, so people look at me like, oh, you don't drink coffee? Oh, they turn on you. But everybody kind of drinks a little bit, and if you don't, it's like, okay. So how do you handle yourself in that kind of situation? How do you handle yourself when your coworker gets a little too tipsy? Disassociation is what I say in a polite way. Like, okay, I'm gonna head out. I always leave a little bit early. I'm gonna just head on out.
And that's a very good point, and we are going to talk about that later on today, is planning your exit. When your boss has had too much to drink, how do you prevent embarrassment in the future? And so we are in the midst of our Causing a Thirst. We are in the midst of our Shake It Up segment, and Shake It Up is where we really shake it up and we get into the nitty gritty of the conversation. So let's start with Miss Hall on the phone line of what are your thoughts on people drinking? Do you have any written or unwritten rules to people drinking in the workplace?
Well, I guess my rule would be drink responsibly and respect those that do not drink. In my experience over the years, I have witnessed, young people drinking, and because the beer is free or the wine is free, they want to drink more than usual. So I would recommend that they definitely, take a look at their surroundings and really understand that this is just a friendly meet and greet and not an opportunity to get drunk.
That's a very interesting point you made there, Ms. Hall. And I want to turn it to our attorney here, Chantel. What are your thoughts on how she said, don't force can you say that again, how you put it, Ms. Hall? Be respectful of those not drinking around you. Is that what you said?
Sure. I think we should respect those that do not drink. Now, I have been around people that choose not to drink, and that's on a everyday basis. They choose not to drink. They may have water or they may have a soda, a non-alcoholic beverage, but they're still in the conversation.
And what do you mean by respect those that don't drink? What do you mean by that?
Well, sometimes, when you get together, because people are drinking, they want you to join them. They encourage you to have a drink. And in my opinion, those that are not willing or want to drink should have that choice. There's always a choice. You choose to or you choose not to, and still not be ostracized from the happy hour.
Right. Excellent point. There is a written rule out there, unwritten rule, that says never trust the person who don't drink, but I'll tell you all about that unwritten rule later. Chantel, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, interestingly enough, I faced that very question because as a very young attorney, after work, we would have a series of happy hours, or attorneys would sit around and have a drink. And so I would get invited. And so after one noticed that I was not drinking, or I'd always order a soda or some water, they were like, people are going to be uncomfortable if you're not drinking along with us. And so at that point, I had to make a decision about, one, if I wanted to continue with the group, but then two, what's my strategy should I decide to go? So I formulated my own personal plan of action, which is, one, I usually would only drink wine. And for every glass of wine, I would have 2 glasses of water. So that usually cut down how much I drank. But people would feel like I was drinking more, but the glass of wine was actually sitting on the table while I was drinking the water. Or 2, I would walk over to the waitress and order a drink that looks like a drink and have her serve it. so people would still feel comfortable. Like, so for instance, you have a drink that has cranberry. People will always assume there's something in your cranberry, even if there's absolutely nothing in your cranberry.
Right, absolutely.
So there are strategies. You don't have to order water. You don't have to order a soda, but you can order a drink that looks like a drink.
Absolutely. And I'm going to give you all more tips on those strategies of how to get around not drinking, because as you're hearing, in certain societies of corporate America, if you're not drinking, you can get cut off from the group. And bosses hire who they know, they hire who they like, and oftentimes you get to know them through going out, hanging out at bars, lounges, after work, or corporate gatherings. And so you can ostracize your career by not drinking. But we're going to teach some strategies here of how to get around that, because in my opinion, not drinking is not the answer. And drinking soda and juice is not the answer. So you've already mentioned a couple tips, and I'm going to share a little bit more. But let's come to Heather. Heather, what's your thoughts on what you've been hearing so far, which has ultimately been what tips do you have, written or unwritten rules for people, which led us into people being cut out of the conversation and being respectful to those that are non-drinkers. So what's your thoughts on all of that?
So I'll say a few things. So just to give you some background, I've been an HR, what's called an HR business partner, which is generally your HR manager or your HR generalist. And that just means you partner with the business to make decisions for the organization that you're in. So we do everything from help create job descriptions and recruit, to deciding performance review results and compensation results and terminations. So just so you know, that's what a business partner usually does. My last few roles, I've been in a good level of HR business partnership, and so I've had a chance to work with a lot of executives. So when it comes to recruiting, and the sister on the phone, I can totally understand. A lot of recruiting exercises have to do with meeting and greeting, information sessions. Is usually very social because they're proving for fit. I went to graduate programs, and on campus there were a lot of those programs, and sometimes the executives see those times as a chance for them to get loose, and you'd be surprised at how many executives on recruiting trips decide to partake. Once you're in the firm, though, or once you're in the organization, drinking has proven to be a team building activity in some ways. So I'm really happy to hear our employment lawyer talk about different strategies around how to make it seem as though you're participating, but not necessarily taking part in drinking too much. I want to bring up the fact, though, that the ADA covers the Americans with Disabilities Act will cover alcoholism. And so when you are a business partner, you do have to think about the folks who have the alcoholism disease. And so you have to make sure that when you are having events that are supposed to be fun and lively, you do have to think about the legal ramifications for excluding people who cannot drink because it's a disease for them. And I had my first experience, a pronounced experience, when I was in California. It's a place where you don't want to mess up the employment law, but you want to make sure that you have opportunities for these folks to feel like they're able to participate without having to compromise their sobriety. And so it's important that if you are in a management position or in a leadership position, you don't make it in a mandatory thing that everybody drinks. So if you're in that position, I really want you to pay attention to making sure that people have access to non-alcoholic beverages. When you are in a situation, though, where or alcoholic beverages are being consumed, I think it's important for you to have thought about the limits. Often we will give tickets. I've been in companies where alcohol is part of our culture, right? And so you give tickets so everyone can't overconsume. So you might give 2 drink tickets where you kind of limit liability that way. so that people don't overconsume. You might plan for transportation home. In a business partner role, you are sometimes faced with people who have suffered from others who have drank too much. So whether that be harassment, which I know we're going to get into, or in some cases where you've harmed yourself, where you've tried to drive home. Employees have tried to drive home and ended up in ditches or gotten arrested after parties. And so I've had experience with those situations, before they come to the system here with employment law, right? We have to deal with it internally and what all happened beforehand. But the way to get around that I've seen be successful is to make sure that people know that, there's a way home. Thankful for the ride share opportunities that we have. Also drink tickets, making sure that you know your limits if you had an opportunity to drink before, and making sure that there's an adequate provision of non-alcoholic drinks.
So Heather, you have given us a mouthful there.
Sorry.
I literally got 2
I usually
pages.
do.
I literally
Ask
have
around.
I have 2 pages of notes from what you just stated. But going back to referring to some of the things before we don't, so that we can address them, and before we move on into the conversation, I mentioned don't trust people who don't drink. Because part of what 100 Proof is all about is telling you what the written rules of drinking are, and also what the unwritten rules of drinking are, because society often just don't know both.
Right.
We don't know the written rules. We don't know the unwritten rules. We don't know the spoken. We don't know the unspoken. We don't know the etiquette and decorum. We just don't know. And so that's why you need to tune in every Tuesday at 9 p.m. to find out what the rules are. So for those of you that just tuned in, we are talking about and having a healthy, mature, and fun discussion about human resources. How does alcohol impact the Me Too movement in the workplace? Hashtag tipsy touchy, hashtag tipsy at work. So be sure to tune in live on Rolling Out's Facebook page and make your comments there, because during our next segment, which is Causing a Stir, coming up in 7 minutes, we will take your questions. But right now, I mentioned don't trust people who don't drink. Here's the scenario around that. I didn't make up this unwritten rule. It's a fact, though, because Ms. Hall, whether she realized it or not, confirmed this statement by saying, have respect for those who are not drinking, because oftentimes they are ostracized from the group. Because why? They're not trusted. And here's why they're not trusted. Oftentimes, decision makers in an organization will go out and wine and dine, and upon drinking, they will discuss things that they probably should not be discussing outside of the boardroom. And typically, people who are drinking will indulge things from their various departments as well. Why they fired Shanae, or why Sugar Boo Boo got sent home, or why Riri got written up. Things that, again, should not be discussed outside of the workplace. However, the person who is not indulging in alcohol is very unlikely, stats show this, to indulge information about their department or their leadership role. As a result, they are taking tabs and taking notes of who is saying what, and will more likely be the one to go back and report this to other superiors and or HR. It's very parallel taking it back out of HR into our regular life. All of us have one friend that don't never tell their business. They listen to all of yours. Everybody else in the group is telling their business and what's going on in their house, but there's always that one person who doesn't share, and it makes you feel uncomfortable. Here's the other example of it. It's very parallel because we're an adult show. It's like if you're having a threesome. I'm not saying I've had one, but you have a third person in the room with you that's not participating. Either you're going to participate or you need to get out the room. So before I go on with my notes, Ms. Hall, what do you have to say about what I just mentioned?
respectfully disagree. You know, as
That's
an
what we're
HR
here about.
professional, I'm sorry?
No, I said that's what we're here for. So definitely,
Right. I
encourage
respectfully
it.
disagree because, frankly, as an HR professional, anytime HR shows up to any event that involves social drinking, you know, the word is HR is around. Be quiet. You better watch yourself. HR is around. And, you know, we, in the past companies that I've worked for, they have sent HR down to or up to events in various locations so that they're there to make sure that if anything happens, they are there to handle the situation. And there are many instances where HR has probably, you know, made it so something that may have happened didn't happen because people are drinking and drinking too much. But anytime I'm around people when they are, you know, socializing and drinking, you know, they look at HR as the enemy. You know, they can't really, you know, indulge, but actually they still indulge, and they still seem to be 2 or 3 different people outside of themselves, depending on how many drinks that they've had.
2 to 3 different people. That's interesting. Heather, you had a statement to make on this conversation.
I can totally understand, and I agree that generally speaking, most people when they think of HR, they think of the police, right? So they talk about HR's here, we can't drink. I'd say fortunately, because I do partake, been part of companies and in leadership of companies where HR held the liquor. You know, HR was known as the group that kept the liquor and made sure that it was adequately distributed and, you know, handed out the tickets or whatnot and did so responsibly. And as a person who, you know, I was pretty successful in my HR career and I worked with leaders as a business partner, I do think that drinking did provide me access. You know, at one point, I think it was you, Jay, who asked me about whether or not, as a woman, what you drink, does that matter?
Right, and
right?
hopefully we
So,
get into that.
Yeah, we'll get
know?
into it more.
Right.
But you know, I'm a bourbon drinker. I like beer. You ask anybody who knows me, I am not a police woman, and I think in some cases, because of that reputation, I did have a pretty successful career. So, you know, people talk about golf and being able to align better with those leaders or share something with those leaders that's personal. I did make it part of my career early on to not be the police. So if I knew that people were probably going to get wild, I did what I could do to make sure that they were safe and that they understood safety and they understood protocol and how to treat each other. But if it got too crazy, I would leave early because that's not the role.
Right. And so you're munching at the gums over here.
Well,
What do you have to say for us?
Well, one of the things I think we also have to discuss is those things that are sanctioned and unsanctioned, because there are the office Christmas party, and then there is the Christmas party where everybody just goes and gets together. And so the rules are very different for those 2 settings. And so people have to decide which event they're going to go to, because oftentimes there's different things happening at those 2 events. And so you may want to go to the Christmas party, but you may want to say no to the after party or to that select group, because there's always that one person who will walk around and say, hey, we getting together.
Right.
Come with us. So you have to be
I'm
mindful
part of that group.
I do want to say though, because I do think it's important to say that that's not bad, right? So
Right.
as an HR business partner,
And I'm saying, don't tell HR.
right? And so, and that's where I want to. It's not necessarily because I get invited to those parties, right? I get invited to the Braves games. I drink bourbon. I get invited to golfing, what have you. HR's in certain companies that's not the police, right? So
we need to take a break right here, and we're going to take another sip. So if you don't have your sip with you, go and get your sip so you can join this conversation. And remember, the purpose of 100 Proof is to dispel and confirm myths about alcohol and drinking on the job. If consumers are better informed about what they are drinking, it helps them to feel like they are in control of their lives. But without further ado, this segment is brought to you by Litty Pops.
Hello, we're back. So this second sip session is going to consist of Hennessy. We have the Anything Possible right here. This one is Hennessy, Hypnotic, and a special Litty juice. So we'll pass that one around. There you go. And it's like we were saying earlier about Litty Pops, we were founded in St. Louis by my wonderful cousin, Ashley Noel, who's watching on Facebook Live. And I remember she called me one day and she was just like, I got this great idea, and it's not brand new. It's not a brand new idea, but it's a great idea. And the marketing behind it is what hit me the most when she came to me about it. She said, we're going to create some alcoholic popsicles, but not just that. We're going to create a whole experience. So we had the Litty Committee. She created these outfits that we have on right here. She made me the CEO. And here we are. So we thank you guys for having us. And on our next sip session, we got a special surprise for you.
So while we have you here at the table, what are your thoughts on women executives and decision makers who drink a powerful, strong drink, whether it's Hennessy, whether it's bourbon, whether it's whiskey, whether it's scotch? Do you think that changes people's perception of them who are in the boardroom with them?
Absolutely. I've had people look at me a little bit like, oh, when I ask for some Hennessy,
Right.
like, oh, okay, you drink Hennessy? What kind of woman are you, Or, but because I'm feminine, you can tell that I'm a woman, but sometimes they'll associate you with being homosexual if you're kind of aggressive. They'll think it's aggressive, or they think you're kind of...
It makes you less feminine.
It makes you less feminine.
In some cases, in some scenarios. So
it really does.
Since you're our liquor sponsor tonight, let's change that scenario around. What if it's a male, powerful executive, decision maker for an organization, and he's viewed as drinking fruity, sweet drinks? Does that change people's perception of his power, even if it's unconsciously? Does that change their perception of his power?
Absolutely. I mean, unconsciously, I would even look at him like, oh, he's drinking a Mai Tai, okay,
Right.
Or, oh, he just wants to have. Now, wine is different. If you're a top executive and you're drinking wine, I wouldn't think any of that, especially like if you're drinking red wine compared to white wine, stuff like that. But if you're ordering like specialty cocktails, if you want an apple martini or, I'm going to be like, oh, okay, I don't even know, I guess, the stigma in society.
Do you think these stereotypes exist across the board of all races, or is it something that's more prominent within the African American community, with the stereotypes of your drink is perceived with your strength, power, sexual orientation, your weakness or strength?
I think it's all across the board. I really do. I don't think it's, but the generalization or the stereotypes, with African Americans, we're going to drink dark liquor, right? So if you see an African American not drinking dark liquor, you're like, oh, okay.
Especially if he's a male.
Especially if he's a male. For our product, we need Hennessy, and Atlanta's always sold out Hennessy. But my cousin in St. Louis, she can get Hennessy like this,
Right.
because St. Louis is, has a different demographic. And I'm like, what is going on in Atlanta? She's like, come on now,
Right.
And I'm like, you're right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you all for being part of this show. So we have a third round coming up in our Hot Spot segment. But Heather, this comes back to you. Women drinking strong drinks, stiff drinks. What's your take on that, on what she just stated?
My father would be so proud that I get to talk about this. So I'll say a couple things. One, the most important thing is know your limit. Nobody likes a sloppy drunk. And if you are an alcoholic, there should be some provision for you. Don't worry about it. Get a ginger ale. You'll blend right in. Usually in the situations that I've been exposed to, people who are alcoholics or struggle with alcoholism are able to talk about that openly. And so by all means, if you have that's a disability that you have and that you're working with and living with, make sure that if you have some certain needs, you express that and your HR department will take care of you. So by no means feel like you need to drink. everybody else, know your limits. So if you're not a drinker of strong alcohol or strong liquor, don't start trying it out at the happy hour for work. That's not the time to figure out your limits. Know your limits beforehand. Phone a friend, and work with someone. Now, as a person who is able to drink stronger liquor, I do like bourbon. That's, my friends know me as a bourbon drinker. I do like, good, robust red wines. I do like beers. I like IPAs. I've worked up the hops ladder, if you will. And I will say that, when it comes to race and gender, a lot of the executives that I've partnered with have been white males. And I know for sure that they had more interest in me as a human being when I decided to start drinking beer. When I said I wanted to drink beer every day, just about, there was somebody coming in my office. They'd leave beer in my office.
And Heather, you make a great point right there. And this goes back to what I stated earlier, is that people promote and they hire who they know and who they're comfortable with. And so here's an example of that. If you take two people, you take Chantel and I, we both have the same education. We've even graduated from the same school. We've been on the job the same length of time. We do the same thing. Chantel chooses to go home after work. Her performance is great. In fact, her performance is better than mine. But guess what? Every Friday night or Thursday, when the boss invites me out to cocktails, I go. Chantel declines respectfully each and every week. As a result of going out with him to the bars or her, I get information such as when a job opening is coming up, who's leaving the organization, how many kids my boss have, what's his wife's name, his kids' name, their birthdays, and vice versa. He's learning those same things, or she's learning those same things about me. I'm comfortable with his drinking. Chantel doesn't drink, which is why she doesn't accept those invitations. When the position comes up, he's already given me a heads up to get my resume together. Chantel doesn't know until there's a posting or announcement about it. He's already introduced me to a few people as a possibility for the role before it's even announced. We both apply for the position. Miss Hall, who is going to get the job, me or Chantel? And remember, her performance is better than mine.
Right. That's a very easy question. I would say more than likely you would get the job, simply because you're the networker. You're where all of the action is happening. Now, I can be Chantel, right?
Yes.
Personally, I'm a Chantel. When they are offering
I used to be a Chantel
office,
until I realized I wasn't getting any promotions.
when they're offering drinks in the office, I show my face for a little while, and then I excuse myself. I don't drink every time they have a drink. If I had a drink every time we offer spirits or we're going to have a happy hour, I would be drinking excessively. So what I do is, I show my face, I network, but, some people are out to get, the job. They want to rub elbows with that executive that can get them where they want to go. And that's fine if that's what they want to do. But I would be more like Chantel, waiting for that posting, applying, and so forth. Unfortunately, it probably would benefit you, Jay Wesley, because you were out and networking and getting to know that particular executive.
And for those of you that are out there watching, listening to these written and unwritten rules, Chantel will be in the same position for 15 years. And I'm exaggerating a little bit, and they'll be wondering why I moved up the ladder so quick. So it's important. Always remember, people promote and hire who they know and who they're comfortable with. But you brought in a good segue as far as Miss Hall, you going in and peeping in, showing your head, and leave back out. And Chantel, you talked about strategies earlier. And we talked about ways to get around it, because here's another unwritten rules for you all in corporate America. The only get out of not drinking is that if you're a pastor or minister or you're pregnant. Otherwise, you really don't get a pass. And so some of the things that you need to know as a strategy is, Chantel mentioned it good, you have to get there early. And you have to go to that bartender and say, when we order a drink, bring me a club soda with a garnish, which might be a lime, or bring me a tonic water with a lime or garnish. And you want to specifically ask for those drinks because club soda and tonic water have an exotic taste to it. And so you're not going to just gulp it down like it's cranberry juice or orange juice like Chantel's drinking tonight. You're going to take your time and sip it just like it's a drink because of the exotic taste. And you're also going to tell that waiter, don't bust you out, because I've been busted out before, where they come and say, would you like another tonic and lime, sir? You tell the waiter, don't do that. Just to, if you do put your hand up for another round or someone buys another round, that they know what to bring you. Heather, do you have any tips as to get around?
Yeah. You know, this is really informative for me because as a person who drinks, I've never had this before. But I will say, and I have to say on behalf of all the business partners out there, it is up to us to help change this, right? Like we do with anyone who has a disability. We need to make the playing grounds even. And so, you know, you can't just make decisions based on who you like. Even though I know I personally benefited, you gotta make them fit in. So that means that you probably need to hire some non-drinkers at leadership levels, just like you would hire people who are deaf at leadership levels, just like you would hire people who, any kind of disability, having, you know, power to say who comes work for them, because you're missing out on talent. So I would hate to not promote the right person because they don't drink bourbon. Like, that's
Right.
a silly reason
Right.
not to promote the right
But
person.
even in your scenario, the same thing will happen. That non-drinker will probably more likely hire more non-drinkers,
Right.
which is kind of what you want, and to balance it out. So that's a good point. But we are in the midst of our Causing a Stir segment. This is where you get to chime in and ask questions and tell us what you think. Do you have a story to share of you drinking too much, or seeing a coworker drink too much, or even seeing your boss drink too much? Type it in. We want to read it, and we want to laugh with you, and we want to hear it. So we want to acknowledge our viewers right now. We have Arletta Brinson. She says, hello. We have Ashley Ashburn. She says, it's Litty. We have...
So Litty.
I like that. It's Litty. We have my frat brother Ken Whitehurst watching. We have my frat Andrew Snorton watching, who's happened to be in the studio with us right now. We have Stephanie Avery, my soror from back in Chicago. We have Chantel Mullen.
That was me. I was
Oh,
saying
that was
hi.
you. Say, hey, Doc. All right.
I didn't think
Look at y'all. We have Quinita Frazier.
my friend.
She says, there is truth in that statement. I wonder what statement. What statement are you talking about, Quinita? She said, hey, Heather, at my girl in HR. And we have Ashley Ashburn say, hey. We have Cerise Simpson Pennington says hello. And we have Exosa Aragua. Litty Pops always. Litty Pops got some viewers out there. For those of you that are just tuning in, tonight's conversation will explore the written and the unwritten rules of managing one's behavior at office events, as alcohol can make employees more relaxed, thus making them cross personal boundaries, whether innocent or not. Poor alcohol management can make others feel uncomfortable if boundaries are crossed. This leads us right into the Me Too movement.
Yes, Lord.
Miss Hall, why don't you lead the conversation on alcohol, men, women, and the Me Too movement? How can one protect themselves, or what's some advice you give someone in regards to boundaries and protecting themselves from the Me Too movement? Ms. Hall, are you there?
Oh, yes. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were asking me that question.
Yes.
Okay, so mine is kind of funny because I know someone, in order to protect herself from a situation of being around someone, a male with alcohol, and knowing the situation could get out of hand. This is funny. She doesn't shave, and she might wear her granny panties. So the situation would not get out of hand. So, I mean, you know, people that are heavily drinking and they're placing themselves in a situation where, you know, there's a possibility that something could happen. I think they have to kind of weigh that situation. Should alcohol be added to that?
So what are you all thoughts on alcohol, men, women, the workplace, and the Me Too movement? Heather, what's your thoughts?
Well, okay, so I do have to say that I am a Spelmanite, a proud Spelmanite, and womanist, feminist. And if no is said, then no means no. You know, just because you're not capable of saying no, you need to abide by that. So just because you're aroused does not mean you have the right to act on that, no matter what. So I do want to just paint the ground with that. I do have some personal experience though, where I was a real junior HR person, and I was out having cocktails and happy hour with a higher level executive who, when my colleagues went to the bathroom together before we were going to leave to go home, started to rub my shoulders and rub my back. He was an executive, older than me. He considered himself my mentor. And, you know, I realized at that point, thankfully I have all male cousins and brothers. I realized what this was about. And so I shot it down very clearly. I was able to do that. Not every woman, though, is able to do that. And so, again, you have to know your limits. I was able to, because I'm a Midwesterner and Hennessy runs rampant, I was able to control my liquor and make sure that I was still conscientious. I wasn't so drunk that this made sense to me. I knew what it was. And I could, you know, tell them to back up. And I would cause a scene if necessary. But at the same time, not all women are able to do that. I think if women are going to drink, you owe it to yourself to learn your limits and to control yourself so that you can defend yourself if necessary. That's not to say that someone who's a perpetrator is right, but you have the ability, if you control yourself, to ward off a horrible experience if necessary.
So we are in the midst of our calls in this third segment. Give us 1 second, Ms. Hall. We have Exosa says Hennessy possible, and Exosa says anything possible. We have Ruby Broussard Irvin that has joined the conversation. She says hello. Ms. Hall, you were going to come in, and we're going to come to you, Chantel.
I would just add to that, you know, as a female, I would try not to put myself in a situation where I could possibly become uncomfortable. Anytime you're drinking, and this is me speaking personally, not as a professional, but I'm just saying, anytime you mix alcohol and males and females and, you know, conversation, things easily can get out of hand. So, you know, you have to be in control of yourself, understand who you are, and when to back out of that situation.
And so we talked about earlier, it's in my notes, planning your exit. And my advice to you all out there is that you have to know when your boss, your peers, your subordinates even, when they're one drink away from having too much, where things are already becoming awkward and uncomfortable, that you start planning your exit. What is planning your exit? Your planning your exit is, I have to get home for the babysitter. You may have even put a friend on notice to, if I am still here, send me a text at 9 p.m. just so the phone a buzz to give you a reason to say, hey, excuse me, I need to go take this phone call, or go to the bathroom. You have to get home to your husband. He has to get to work, and you have to get the kids. You have to have a plan in action beforehand before things get weird and odd. And hear this. If you are the boss and you're seeing your subordinates over drink, it's your responsibility not to plan an exit. You have to be their babysitter and make sure that they get home responsibly, because that can be a liability for the organization. So particularly when you're around peers and superiors, you can plan an exit. If it's your subordinates, you need to see them all the way through, take their car keys, you pay for the Uber, and see that they get home. But Chantel, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, you should plan your exit. I believe in going into any situation with a strategy. And so
You love strategy.
I
You've
do-
said
I
that
do.
several times today.
I do, because, you have to plan ahead.
You and Miss Hall on the same team. Heather, me and you on the same team.
Well, because, we have all heard that alcohol is liquid courage. When people take drinks, they start to say things and do things that they normally would not do, or they've had an inkling that they wanted to do, but with a little bit of courage, they will then do it. And to be politically correct, you can be hit on by a male and a female.
Right, absolutely.
Because I've experienced both out in the setting. And so if you have a plan of action, it tends not to catch you off guard, because you've already prepared yourself for it.
Interesting. And for those you of HR directors out there, you need to have me come in and do a session and training to do what Chantel just spoke about, as far as safety, as far as precautionary actions that you can take when you find yourself in these situations with superiors, peers, subordinates, and clients. And so right now we are in the midst of our 1 minute sip segment. No, yes. Is this our sip segment or PSA? So we are going to our PSA, because we want you to drink responsibly, and we're coming back to our hotspot segment to talk about more Litty Pops. But right now we're going to turn the camera to my frat brother, Mr. Andrews Norton.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As you know, each Tuesday, 9 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, where you want to tune in is going to be Rolling Out Magazine on Facebook Live, hosting the show 100 Proof with Cocktail Chronicles. Jay Wesley is the host. When it comes to best practices, engaging conversation, lively discussion, this is where you want to be, as the show keeps it real, honest, frank, and accessible. We want you to enjoy alcohol, but enjoy it responsibly. And please don't forget, always have an exit strategy, ride share, or some type of way to get home safely, soundly, and securely. Again, we keep it 100 each Tuesday from 9 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The show 100 Proof, hosted by Cocktail Chronicles, in conjunction with Rolling Out Magazine on Facebook Live.
Thank you, Brother Snorton. I appreciate that. And this is typically our On Fire segment, where we give you what's crack-a-lacking in the business world of beverages. But since we still have so much to cover, I mean,
I know I have so much to say, Jay Wesley, that I haven't even gotten to the tip of the iceberg.
Miss Hall, I'm right there with you. Like, time is running out, and it's so much more to cover. I do think we're going to have a part 2 for this conversation. And if you're out there listening, viewers, I want you can still tell us your comments. I want to acknowledge, we have Ruby Broussard Irvin says hello. Cerise Simpson Pennington, she says great point. Ashley Ashburn says great point, ladies. Know your limits. Ruby Broussard Irvin says well said, Miss Hall. Calvin Spinks, we see you watching. Ted Bear, we see you watching. And so one of the things I want to mention right now is that someone said earlier about, and I think it was you, Chantel, that talked about unsanctioned parties. And so
Yes.
I'm probably telling on myself too much. Me too. But I'm the one that have the parties up in the room at corporate events and invite people back, and we keep it going after the corporate party is over. But what I want people to know out there is that even if it's in your boss's home, a Christmas party, it could be their personal party, it could be the after party of the corporate party. And if someone makes you feel uncomfortable, as Heather said, the touch, the Philly, you can still take that back to your HR department on that Monday morning. Again, even if it's at someone's personal home, and they can be held to the same level of accountability and responsibility as if it happened at a corporate sanctioned event. So I'm going to pause right there and come to Heather to see if you have any thoughts on the unsanctioned events and someone held being responsible.
Yeah, I think, again, if you are a drinker, know your limits. This is not the place to get sloppy. It just doesn't. It's not worthwhile, right? You don't want to find yourself in a situation. Not that you're responsible if anybody does anything wrong, but you want to have a good time and you want to leave and you want to get home safely, what have you. So never get sloppy. If there is an incident, though, where someone does something that violates your personal space, or they say something to you that violates you personally and you deem as harassment, then you do need to go to your HR person. And, there's good HR and there's bad HR.
Right.
And like I said, I do generally partake, and I do have, relationships. I'm an extrovert. I do tend to make friends with my client leaders, and I can have that conversation and make sure that never happens again. But if you do have something that happens that's inappropriate, you do need to report that.
Right. And so, Chantel, since you brought this conversation up of unsanctioned events, what are your thoughts on people being held accountable and responsible at someone's personal holiday party or back in their room? Can you validate that? Can they be held responsible from a corporate perspective?
Yes, because it is your coworker. And so even if it happens off company property, there's still potentially liability there. You have to look at, one, that person's history, because there may be a person at the company that has multiple reports and the company hasn't done anything about it. They could know about these unsanctioned parties. So there could be liability in a couple of places, because you could sue the person personally, but you could also end up having some claims against the company as well, depending on what the circumstances are. And if we really look at the statistics, there's a new study out that talks about at least 50% or more of women in the workplace have experienced some kind of harassment. So companies really have to be on guard to look out for these situations that are occurring with their employees.
Right. So
I agree. I agree. I think they also have to investigate the situation. I mean, when something comes up and someone brings the situation to their attention, that something was done inappropriately, they should have a full investigation and then decide on what the proper decision is as far as giving that person some type of reprimand.
Right,
so,
and that's a very good point, because I've found myself in this situation. Lord knows I'm telling too much tonight. Where
Tell it.
this is the 100, and we like to keep it 100 proof. But I have had an employee of mine to go to HR and say that I encouraged them to drink. They felt like it was peer pressure, and I was their superior. So for my HR people that I have here, and let's start with you, Ms. Hall, what advice would you give a manager who's encouraging his employees to drink just to have a good time? He meant nothing by it, but the employee was looking to go home, and he's like, "Yo, just one more, man. Come have one more drink with us." Any feedback to that?
Well, one thing that we haven't mentioned that I've seen in my workplace is when we have an event, if it's an event where the entire company is invited, they send out a disclaimer. And this disclaimer says, you are coming to this event on your own. You are not, your job is not in jeopardy. You're not being, it's not those exact words, but basically they're saying you are going to attend this event on your own. Your job is not, you're not being forced, you're not being coerced to do it. And you either check. If you check yes, that means you're going to be put on the list and you're RSVP. If you check no, then you don't go. Now, when it comes to that manager having an event or having a after party, so to speak, I think it's wrong because employees do feel obligated to follow because that is the manager, and he may be inviting his team to come and partake and have more alcohol. So, to me, a good manager would maybe make that suggestion. And those that come, and those that don't.
And so, I mean, that's a good point. And for those of you that are out there watching, you have to be very conscious of inviting employees to your parties, whether at home or to the after party, as we mentioned, and even encouraging them just to have another drink with you, because you can find yourself in hot water or being excluded. Because in my situation, and I share my situation so that you can learn from my experience, it was meant with all good intentions, and it was taken the wrong way. However, when you go make those reports to HR, in this case, the person isn't going to always be fired immediately. However, it puts you in a funny, awkward situation with communication with your boss. So you have to be very sure if that's something that you want to do and go and tell that your boss asked you to have a drink with them. But Heather, you had something to say about that.
Yeah, I think this is a great lesson in HR. So recruitment is an integral, probably the most integral part of an organization's development when it turns to HR. Right? They bring in the good talent. They are the first entree to the employment within that company for a certain candidate. But after recruitment has done their job, they come over to me, the HR business partner. And so it's up to me to make sure that everything's kosher, so to say, right? So, Jay, if you were my client in an organization, I would say, don't make it about drinking, right? So there's plenty of employees. I've been invited myself because I am a drinker. I've been invited myself to up top, right? I've been invited myself to these parties. Usually it's like a Halloween party, like just something ridiculous and nobody has plans. And they'll have drinking there, but it's about the costume. Right. So it's not about coming back to drink as much as it is coming back to socialize.
Right.
And if you don't drink, that's fine. Nobody's sweating you because I've got my Hennessy because I'm a Midwesterner from Michigan. Represent
Chi-town.
Grand Rapids. That's what's up. So, when we, those of us who do drink, we know that there are people who don't, and that's perfectly fine. That has to be acceptable.
Right.
I can't express that enough, that if you are an HR business partner or a business leader and you don't have HR, you've got to have avenues for people who don't drink that's not an issue, whether or not they are fitting into the organization or
Exactly.
not.
Great point. We are in the midst of our hotspot segment, and this is where we're going to bring back our sponsors. If you don't have a sip, go get you a sip so you can sit with us. Litty Pops.
We're back. Sip session number 3. So do you want to know what your surprise is?
Yes.
I'm scared.
It's just free packages of Litty Pops for you, for you, for you.
Yes. All right, Oprah.
Oh, okay. So for this, the conversations were so hot, the Litty Pop started to melt, so that's okay. But our third sip session is our most popular flavor, the Paradise Peach. The Paradise Peach has vodka in its Ciroc, and it has a peach schnapps, and it also has a special peach Litty juice. So we'll pass that one around to you all so you can take a sip of that. I think you're getting a little Litty. Be careful with that one because that one has melted.
Yeah.
So Litty Pops, I heard you say earlier, Jay, our mission One of our missions is definitely to make America lit again. And that mission came about just as a fun, pun, some parody based off our current administration, So we were like, you know what? Everybody's taking life so, let's kind of relax and get life lit again, enjoy life. But our other most important mission is to live life lit. And so behind that is our philanthropy cause, where we're not encouraging people to just drink, but drink responsibly is what we encourage people to do, and to enjoy your best life the best way that you can. Get around good people, be around great people, responsible people who support you. In the wake of all this suicide that we have going on right now, just try to surround yourself around people who make you feel the best that you can. So live
And
life
where can
lit.
people find you all?
Yes, littypop.com, LITTYPOP.com. And then on Instagram, it's Litty Pops 314. The 314 is for St. Louis, the Midwest.
All right, my mom lives in O'Fallon, Missouri.
Oh, perfect.
Yes, absolutely, right up the street.
We'll mail her some too.
Yes, please do. So, what are your final thoughts on this conversation right here tonight?
I think it's very important, very, very important, because a lot of people are not aware when they get into those situations. No one talks to you about this. No one talked to me about it before I got into the situation when I started my corporate job. And you just get into it, and you have to be consciously aware of how to manage yourself. And some people do not. I've seen those employees who just get real loose, and I'm like, oh, but I know everybody does not know. They're not built with that kind of personality trait, I guess. So, and I am the social one who's going to hang out with you guys afterwards.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we want to thank you for being here
Thank
tonight.
you for having us, Jay. Yes.
And excellent. So we want to appreciate you and everybody out there. Go and get you some Litty Pops. But
Yes.
Chantel, we're going to turn it over to you. What are your final thoughts on this conversation tonight?
Well, I think as a manager, you should be cognizant of setting an environment where people feel like they have to engage in something. Because as a manager, you should be looking across your talent field. So, today it may be alcohol, but tomorrow it may be golf. It may be something that excludes you. And so we should encourage people kind of set a level playing field and be mindful that people don't always partake in everything in public settings.
That's what Ms. Hall started us out with. So, Ms. Hall, let's go to you. What's your final thoughts on this conversation?
Well, my point would go to the millennials. I can hardly say that, but it would go to the young people. Understand, what's your limit. Be aware of how much you're drinking, where you're drinking. Also, be professional. Stay professional. If you want to stay with a company, you have to show professionalism. You have to show that you can handle your alcohol and have a conversation and be trusted. And I think that sometimes employers offer you alcohol to kind of look to see how do you handle it when you're out with our clients. So I think it's always a situation where if you want to drink responsibly.
And Ms. Hall, you made a very great point there. That was part of my lasting notes. I can scratch it out, as you all see, because employers really do set up cocktail parties, and they invite all of their spring recruits, summer recruits, fall recruits, and they do it usually 3 times a year, spring, summer, fall, or however they may do it, and they have alcohol flowing. There are no drink tickets, Heather, as you mentioned earlier, and they're watching you, and you would be so surprised at how many people are sent home the very next day. And it's not because some of them don't make it to the training at 8 a.m. that morning. They're sent home before they've overslept and have already been tapped on the shoulder saying, hey, you got a flight ticket for 7 a.m. So, Heather, what are your final thoughts on this conversation?
Final thoughts, a couple things. One, as a person, an adult, you need to know your limits, right? If you're not a drinker, don't start drinking or at a work event. Know your limits. This is not the place to try to learn your limits. As a manager, don't make drinking the main event. Make sure that people understand that there's games, there's cornhole, there's ping pong, there's pool. There's a lot of things that could be going on. There's different conversations, darts. There's a lot of things. Halloween costumes, right? There's a lot that could be going on that people want to encourage you to stay, but it doesn't have to do with drinking, because be besides all of what we're talking about, there's the ADA, and alcoholism is covered. So you want to make sure of that, and you don't want to have any issues afterwards. But other than that, I'd say be adults. Be grown-ups. Be thoughtful about what work actually means and what qualifications actually mean, and control yourself.
Absolutely. And so for my final thoughts, we want to always encourage you to watch us every Tuesday at 9 p.m. right here on Rolling Out. And be sure to have Cocktail Chronicles to come and do a safety program at your work, because we will have you do a disclaimer. As Heather mentioned earlier, we will have safety and precautions. And so we want to thank Chance, our sound engineer, and C Uno for the music. And we want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in, and be sure to share this. And I want to thank all of my visitors for being here today. And again, we will see you next Tuesday at 9 p.m. right here on Rolling Out TV, as our conversation will be cocktails and dating. Who pays for the first drink?